Also believe that Chief John Perez must be fired, not just should be fired, but he must be fired. And I believe that because of the conspiracy since day one that he's been pushing to push a false narrative that falsely criminalizes Anthony McClain when we all know that Anthony McClain was the victim of his death. And and I also believe that City Manager Steve Mermel must also be fired for his co-conspiracy in pushing that false narrative and defending that false narrative alongside Chief Perez when we know that they had access to the raw footage. Black Lives Matter Pasadena was making demands to release the raw footage. They did not. They chose to release a heavily edited version. And because of that choice, both men need to be fired.
When I arrived that night that he was shot, I saw all of these young people walking around angry, just not knowing what to do, and immediately thought about Jesus going through the towns and villages. And the Bible says he saw the people helpless and harassed like sheep without a shepherd. That pricked my heart, and that's when I made a commitment to serving our community, especially those who've been traumatized by this type of violence against people of color, on behalf of those who are called and sworn to protect and serve us. So I've walked with the Barnes family. I've walked with Anya Slaughter, Kendrick McDade's mom. I did a prayer vigil for R.J. Thomas. I've done walked with Anthony's family. So I've seen it on the front line. And as a pastor, I'm tired of burying these young people. I'm tired of standing here at their memorials and saying their names when they should be alive to this day, saying their own names. So whatever it takes, we've got to help our community. We've got to teach our people to be vigilant, to be steadfast. This isn't our championship. This is just one win on the way to what we really believe we deserve, and that is justice flowing through our streets like oceans, righteousness flowing through our streets like rivers. And we won't stop until we see that change.
Well, speaking of stopping, I think that's another good point.
All right.
You hitting all cylinders.
All right.
Now that the George Floyd criminal process have concluded, why don't you share with the viewers really how critical is it that Pasadena, the residents of Pasadena, understand the exposure that Chief John Perez has brought on the city because of his complacency as well as conspiracy, because now with their own video has shown corruption. It has shown that they planted the gun that they allege Anthony was carrying, and nothing in the video corroborates anything that John Perez purported at the various press meetings and or city council meetings that he's administered with his authority as the chief of police. So why don't you share with us, as a minister, what comes to mind when a person does that? And then as a community leader, what must we do to raise the bar now so that we do not become a statistic that has no accountability in light of the circumstances behind John Perez?
Well, I just preached on Sunday a message called "Do the Right Thing," kind of based off of Spike Lee's movie, but it's really just about doing righteousness and how we all have a responsibility to do what's right in the eyes of God and in the eyes of our fellow man. So when our chief and our city did not choose to do the right thing concerning this specific crime, it created a whirlwind and a tipping point for our community, and it's right in line with what's happening in our nation. But what we must do now is we must be vigilant. we must be on our guard. We must create a sustained protest and continue, as you're doing, my brother, to bring out the facts, and people have to stand behind them all the way through until we see justice. The Montgomery boycott was a year and 16 days. They sustained a boycott of not riding the buses for over a year. So whatever it takes, we have to sustain that protest. We've got to put a full court press. Now that we're in the national news, when our city said at the beginning, oh, Anthony's this is not a George Floyd, this is not a Minneapolis, but now we're saying, oh, it's even worse than a Minneapolis. And we haven't gotten justice yet. So what it does, it compels us to keep fighting, keep pressing, keep standing up, keep showing up, and keep speaking up until we see that change.
Well, I want to just share this with you and get your response on this, because you keep me thinking through all the things that have come through all of the interviews today, especially with the Floyd's family. Yeah. And Felonious Floyd said a very profound comment today. He said, the passing of the baton did not start with George Floyd, but because of the path of Emmett Till, we must get ready for the future Emmett Tills. So what would be your response to something that profound for someone to tie all of this together on a day like today?
I think it just shows the beauty of African American people and our journey, our story. It is a collective story. It's not one-sided, but he was able to link together the history of such atrocities and violence towards our people when we built this nation. So there's a keen awareness of responsibility within the Black community that's always been there. We've always known that we're our brother's keepers. We've always known that we need to do what's right.
As the individual did look at him, and so the officer fired likely because he was worried the individual was probably going to turn to fire at him. We are part of what has occurred. We were the officers that shot that bullet that took their son's life. We are responsible and accountable for that event that happened.